Alrighty, we got the Coaches Parley show here on ASTV. Today we have Mike Stackhouse in the bottom and Trevor Stalker in Alberta, Mike in Saskatchewan representing well in the middle. We've got a great show for you planned today. Cup 3 periods and a pregame, so let's get right to it. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Really good.
I'm good.
All right, we're good. Trevor's a man of words. We'll start with him. Give us some updates, Trevor. What's happening in Alberta? I mean, in terms of return to play and what you might learn. What can you tell us what's happened the last couple of weeks?
With the Hockey Alberta, they're actually getting really good with keeping everybody up to date and stuff like that. They're always having posts and stuff like that. There's another one today, one just 2 days ago as well. Mainly focusing around the minor hockey and stuff like that and where that's happening and how they're going to work out the season and get stuff going. Talking about even the possibility of starting exhibition games for teams that are already starting, selecting teams and whatnot. But just a timeline basis, no actual date. Today's update was in regards to how they're going to do their tiering games. Again, timeline based, no actual dates, but they are figuring that they'll get that going in November. Exhibition games, though, however, if you are practicing as a phase 3 with contact, there is a 14-day period that you would have to stop and take a break from a team if you're doing tryouts and whatnot and get cut. Or if you do exhibition games, when they allow them in October, you would have to have a 14-day cool down period before you can start your tiering games, because you would start into a new pod. So looks like what they're doing is pairing off teams for tiering or making pods 2 to 3 teams. You'd play them and see where you land, and then you'd have to have a 14-day break.
Mike, how's Saskatchewan looking?
Well, I think the pods or the cohort, whatever you want to call it, I think that's being discussed here too. And, you know, from our junior hockey perspective, there's some challenges with that, because I think, you know, can these guys afford to keep players around at the Billets house for 2 weeks and not play? Yeah, I don't, you know, and is it healthy if you're going to do that? Is it all of a sudden healthy to then play 3 nights in a row, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Is that good for anybody? Or does that health not really matter? I mean, and we talked about it off air as to what health conditions we seem to care about, and then the rest we don't care about. So I think the pod thing is being discussed. I don't believe they're doing that in Manitoba as far as the junior league is concerned. And as we're recording this show on a Thursday night, they're already playing preseason games with some fans in the building, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, the 2 Winnipeg teams at it. Winkler had a game middle of the week here, and it's you know, it's exciting to see hockey return. I don't know if they're going to move with pods. I don't know if they're going to move geographical areas. I don't know how that's going to work. I think October 9th looks like it's going to be the deal.
Yeah, I think they're, at least the last I saw with Manitoba, is that they're going to sort of keep things as close to home as possible. Like the South teams are going to play the North teams, and Harry's not with us tonight, but I wanted to ask him, and I again, half joking, half not, but did they add that 12th team in Winnipeg to make sure that everybody can play? Because when they had 11, it's pretty difficult to play, because ordinarily you don't green light an expansion team and say, oh yeah, they're going to start playing in a month. But that's kind of what happened here. And I wondered if COVID had a role to play in that. You know, in Saskatchewan, I think, the frustrating thing for me is outside of the Maritimes, our caseload is the lowest in the country, and we're acting like it's not. And schools are open with success. I mean, sure, we're not 100%, but, you know, when you factor in a province of 1 million people and you've got dozen or so cases in schools, nobody's ill, they're positive, but they're not ill. Things are going really, really well. And I think that, you know, some of the people thought that, well, maybe we'll evaluate what's happening in school and go from there. Well, I think it's been 2-3 weeks and nobody's sick. So I feel like that the time has come, and I was hoping, I even said when you asked when should we record the show, and I put it off as long as we could because I was cautiously optimistic that we'd have an announcement that I could share on a program tonight, and yet I still don't. So I think part of it, honestly, is election posturing. We have a provincial election here coming up in less than a month, and there's a government that I think feels as though if they let a little bit too much happen, that they could lose some votes. But I think they also should sort of realize that a lot of people in Saskatchewan that vote also play hockey. And if you're not going to let us play, we might vote the other way too, even though the other option might not be all that attractive.
It's hard to think that might be part of the equation to why hockey's being slowed down. But like we said, seeing junior players here in Winnipeg and Manitoba starting to play exhibition games, it looked like it's going to be a go for that MJHL season to start October 9th. They're very close to it, unless something drastically happens where a team gets a crazy outbreak, or they have to go in lockdown session. I'm not too sure if they're going to be doing like a pod system like you said, but I mean, from a geographic standpoint, there might be those 2 weekend games, or there might be a showcase idea based on the schedule that may work with 3 or 4 teams in one area. Regardless, they're going to be that first step forward, and then we'll see the rest of the leagues starting up. I haven't heard what's happening from a high school standpoint, but I'm pretty certain that they're going to stop that, and they're not going to have that going for at least the fall, which is, I mean, we can talk for hours about high school sports and how that's not being allowed. And the bottom line is we're going to stick to the junior stuff. We're going to stick to what we know, and we can perhaps talk about the high school aspect of it in our next show, because like you said, Mike, we've had 3 weeks of school. We've had that testing point. We've had that opportunity to look and see what's happening within the schools, but now we've got to get the rest of life's extracurriculars going too here. And that includes getting out there and having fun.
Have we not seen enough evidence already that the virus doesn't spread through actual gameplay? Like whether it's basketball, like football now, hockey and we're going to talk about the bubble. The virus isn't spreading in through this gameplay. Just a quick thing with the high school here in Saskatchewan. This morning, Saskatchewan High School Association said sports are a go, and then by tonight, Regina said not us.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with our first period action here on the Coaches Parley. So stay with us.
At Super 8 Winnipeg West, we have your comfort in mind with free Wi-Fi and free daily Superstart breakfast. We also have guest laundry facilities, a state-of-the-art fitness center, and a jetted hot tub. Sleep well in a spacious guest room equipped with plush new bedding, a 50-inch flat-screen HD TV, microwave, mini refrigerator, and Keurig coffee maker. Or book a suite with a kitchen, ideal for extended stays. Super 8 Winnipeg West, located just inside the perimeter on Portage Avenue.
It's a heated topic in the pregame show. Let's get to our first period. And the first period does talk about the bubbles, Mike. We've watched the NHL. We're now seeing the Stanley Cup Finals. Cheer for who you want to. But as far as I know, we haven't had a single case of COVID in a bubble, in the NHL bubble.
No.
Correct?
No.
Nope.
So
no, we haven't.
No. And what protocols are we seeing that may exist in our local rinks come this fall?
Well, Trevor might know better than I on that, but I think as far as protocols go, I think masks are a foregone conclusion. I think probably you're going to see every other row as far as the stands are concerned when they let fans in. I think probably they're going to say if you attend the game with your family, you can sit together, but then there's got to be some sort of distance, whether it's 2 seats or 3 seats before the next family can sit down in that same row. I've also heard, and I've heard people say 50-50 is going to look a little bit different. You're not going to be able to buy a 50-50 ticket the way you used to be able to. And I just shake my head. There is a certain, at some point, right, and maybe we've long passed this, but you overthink the project. And if you want to be clean and you want a social distance, heck, if you want people to wear masks, go ahead. I'm not a mask guy, but if that's what it takes to get me in, to get hockey going, sure, I'll wear a mask, and I'll go in and I'll watch the game. And am I going to wear the mask for the whole game? No. But I think probably most people fall into that category. And I think the important thing is we got to get going. Like, let's get going. And then when we're going, whatever we decide to do is not going to be perfect, but let's get going and then say, okay, this rule is working really good. This rule is not working so good. So let's tweak this rule. And I think, like, I don't know why it's, well, geez, we've got no cases, but we're afraid of cases, or we don't know how we're going to manage all this, the health protocols. Well, it's a work in progress, like everything is. So let's just get going and let's put some rules in place, and some of them will work and some of them won't, and we'll adjust them as we go.
Mike, I'm picturing you wearing the Andy Reid face shield and the iTech fog-free flying off the shelves at the skate rink.
I don't know how old you are, Theo, but ever watch Spider-Man as a kid, and when they had like the black Spider-Man?
Venom.
It's my mask. I got a balaclava, and all you can see are my two eyes.
I was watching some coaches that are playing, actually coaching in inclement weather, cooler weather, and I'm seeing their faces just fog up. I'm like, I'll go to the basement, I'll grab that old iTech fog free, or let them know about the shampoo smear. Remember the shampoo smear and there's anti-fog and whatnot?
We'll get off topic a little bit. Like, I am concerned a bit about, the money grab aspect here. Like, I'm seeing some helmets.
That's a whole different bag of weed, Mike.
That bothers me. Like,
it's now becoming trendy to find a mask. It's now becoming trendy to find something to fit over your half shield or continue on with your shield.
But some of these companies,
I wanted to get your point of view on this because, you're around a lot more minor hockey. You've been into the rinks in Lethbridge and Calgary. What are you seeing now, and what do you think is going to continue on so that hockey can begin the way Mike and I think it should?
Well, in Alberta, it's all over the map still. Lethbridge has now allowed 50 spectators, but for tryouts and stuff like that, they were family spectators only. So even if they weren't hitting their 50 max, nobody else was allowed in. Typically, it was dependent on the cohort that was on the ice at the time. Sometimes as well, the City of Lethbridge staff, arena staff, were saying that was up to the cohorts, and they were still limiting the 50, but if they wanted the extras from family to make it up to the 50, that was up to the cohorts. Edmonton, I just saw a list of arenas that what they're allowing for spectators, and it's all over the map just based off of size and seating capacity. I'm not sure what they're doing, if they're doing 25%, 50%. Lethbridge, the one, they close it off by section to section. So tryouts, so you have 2 groups of tryouts to make the small areas. One section gets in, sits, they're off the ice. They go with the big weed spray bottles with sanitizer in it, spray that section down. The next group has to sit in the section over. You're going to see that all over the place. Calgary's the same thing again. They had 50 per cohort that were allowed, up to 100 max, depending on the arena. To get in to have games, I don't know what that's going to look like. They're going to have 1 parent per kid, because if there's only allowed 50 people in an arena.
Are we going to see the lawn sprayers bottom of the glass with a big 50-foot hose and the sprayer going off between games. I mean, the one thing I've noticed more
with
than
that
anything,
with the game, yeah.
I'm going to say that where the Oilers are playing, where the Leafs are playing, or they were playing, those two arenas were probably the most clean NHL facilities of the entire North America ordeal. They, if anything, and we've all played hockey, we've been in rinks. Rinks aren't the cleanest places, but at the same time, this has obviously maybe been the opportunity for procedures to be put in place to make sure that we are cleaning a little better within these facilities. And I've noticed it not just through hockey rinks, but also the diamonds when softball was continuing here in Manitoba. Shared facilities outdoors were used in a better understanding that this is a shared space and it needs to be taken care of by all. And it wasn't a foregone conclusion. It was the fact that if we want this to continue, we need to do our part. And I think rinks here in Manitoba and I think all over Canada will become cleaner, and we'll have to follow a better procedure to make sure that they can offer that safety so that we can have those percentage of fans that do actually want to show up. I mean, that's the big deal too. Mike?
A cleaner rink is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like there are some some fallout issues, for lack of a better word.
Probably the first time I've never heard Mike speak.
And it's quiet for once.
Mike's got a good point though, and like I said, it's important that
are good.
Mike, you're right. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with having a good, clean rink. There's nothing wrong with going to a supermarket and seeing a clean supermarket. I think it's great that we're seeing those procedures put in place, and if it assures people and spectators to come back, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that the bubbles have shown us in all four sports, or three of the four sports, I should say. We'll leave baseball aside. That we're seeing a responsible and accountable position by both the people that are reporting on the game, if they're able to attend the game, and then the players themselves. Having that said, we'll take another quick break here. We'll hop on to the second period, and we'll talk more about we'll get off the bubble aspect of things. We're going to talk a little bit about personal and team awards. So do stay with us here on the second period coming up here, Coaches Parley. We are getting a little bit of feedback from Mike. He's going to try and join us here in a sec. Once he does, we'll hop on to the second period. As we move along the middle frame, we're starting to see the NHL awards come out. They finished finally. Congratulations to those professionals that get to take home some of the hardware. But is it more important, do you think, Trevor, for players to earn those personal accolades at a young age, or to still understand to buy in to the team game to make sure that the team is winning and player comes second?
Yeah, for NHL purposes and stuff like that, I think you got to have both. They're all old enough to know and respect the game enough to know that it is a team sport. Ultimately, the goal is, of course, the Stanley Cup.
I'm going to hold you right there. Hold on 1 second, because we see players traded because they don't buy in. And we see unbelievable contracts, not to mention teams in the NHL, the Toronto Maple Leafs, that have spent crazy amount of money on 4 or 5 players, and they can't afford the rest of their roster. Now continue with what you got to say. I just want to cut in there real quick.
Good points. Now, is that management or is that players? I know the players want the big contracts. Management wants the ultimate goal. Teams should want to play for the team to achieve the ultimate goal. But in the same aspect, I think personal accolades, they need to stay there. You come into the season, you're the number one goalie, you downright flat out earn it, the Vezina, you earn it. No, you can't give every goalie in the NHL the Vezina. That's something that's a great accomplishment. Same with the Calder every year. There's a lot of great players that keep coming into the NHL. One's going to stand out usually more than the other. So personal accolades, yes, they're great. The younger ages, I am totally against the team awards for participation.
I will agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm over that.
But I'm not saying that it's not great to show off that the highest goal scorer in U16 AAA, best goal. There should be league awards given out, I believe, when you get to, Bantam U16 or U14, U16, U18s.
Yeah.
I think those should still be there. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
For that age group, yeah, like they're at the age level and the skill level and play level that league awards for sure. You go out there and you get 150 goals, 100 and some odd points and stuff like that. You're that standout player. You deserve some recognition for it. Typically, if you're that player, you've worked your ass off to get there. So you should be recognized for your efforts. For the kids that want it, go for it. Go work for it. If you want it that bad, what's holding you back?
You're absolutely right. I mean,
if you want to
you mentioned management and organization from the professional standpoint. Why wouldn't an organization or a club team want to have those team championships as well and put as much weight on them, if not more, than the personal accolades? I mean, it's great to see a pedigree and a continuation, a tradition built on a lot of these teams having the opportunity to show that off. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. That comes down to, again, during the tryouts and stuff like that, coaches hopefully do their best job to pick the right players to accomplish their end goal, which should be winning that banner at the end of the year, any league championships in that stance. I would be going for that.
Yeah. Mike, great to have you back. You with us now?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Usually I got really good internet, so I'm sorry about that.
I was going to say, Trevor and I were wondering, maybe you hit the mute button on purpose. I don't know what was going on there, but it was we're talking about personal plays. And I'm going to bring up your boy from Yorkton, because I talked to the head coach here this past week, and Chance Petruic. Do you think Chance would rather have the scoring title or rather have a Canalta Cup?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that any player who is a team player would rather have team success. I think, having said that, though, if a player, and you'll very seldom get a player be honest about it, but I also think by and large, if a player recognizes that his team isn't going to win, the motivation to snag an individual award will take over. And you can call that selfish. I call it reality. If you're, whatever player, and I don't know what, an example to give. Chance was on a pretty good Yorkton team, but if Chance was on a team that was going nowhere and he had no chance of being traded to a winning team, I think probably his motivation to sustain some personal goals, whether it's a scoring title or an MVP, probably takes over. And I think that's okay in a situation where you realize that your team is going nowhere. Yeah. You got to stay motivated somehow.
Right. And so while you were on hiatus there during the second period, I asked Trevor this question: at what age do you stop thinking about? Well, no. So let me rephrase that. What age do you want to see individual awards given out in league perspective, like a top scorer, top goaltender, versus continually giving out the participation awards at a young age? Does that do anything for a player when they're younger, or is it something more that you earn as you get through the U14, 16, 18 league play?
Are you trying to fire me up tonight? What are you, you know what? I think the earlier that you
there's only 3 of us tonight, and I can ask you this now because I'll probably get some hums and haws from Sean when he shows up, or Ryan, and Lord knows Harry's got his own perception on this, perspective on this. I want to see you get a little fired up without the politics.
Look, the earlier that you can reward people for doing something good, the better. And I'm a big believer in incentives. And I mean, I could go on a societal rant right now. You look at Serb and giving everybody $2,000. For sports, the only way to foster competition is to create it through motivational things such as winning, such as being the top goalie, the top scorer, the top defenseman, and things of those nature. And when you don't win those awards, depending on age, and I would advocate that you should hand them out as young as 7 years old. And if my 7-year-old thought that he needed to win an award, the onus is then on me as a parent to be honest with my 7-year-old and explain to him why he didn't win and what he might be able to do to get himself into a position that he could win. But even if he doesn't win, that's not so bad either, because did you leave it all out there on the ice? And if the answer is yes, and you did the best that you could, not all of us are going to be MVPs. Not all of us are going to be the top defenseman. Not all of us are going to be the top goalie. And that's just the way it is. And when you do things like, like I used to coach soccer when my son was 7 years old. And the last thing I wanted to do was to beat a team 20-0. But what I did do with him was I said, look, you've scored 8 goals. That's probably enough with your right foot. Can you use your left foot? Or can you not score for the next 5 minutes until this kid over here, you set him up and he gets 2 or 3 goals? Like, there's other things that you can do without saying, well, turn the score clock off. We don't want to keep score. Winning is healthy. And I'll use an example. You say there's only 3 of us. You got time for this story. Jamie Feasel used to coach the Melville Millionaires. And a number of years ago, they're in a playoff series with Yorkton, and they're down in the series 3-2, and they end up winning game 6, but they shouldn't have won game 6. They were outshot badly, like 40-20, and their goalie stood on his head, and they won the game 2-1. After the game, he noticed that his players were not happy about the win. They recognized that they were lucky, and they were still kind of down in the dumps about it. And Jamie looked at the guys in the dressing room after, and he said, guys, why do we play the game? And of course, everybody gave, well, to have fun. And Jamie rolled his eyes and he said, okay, to have fun. But what's fun? Winning is fun. And you won tonight. So why do you all look like you lost? And they won game 7. I think it was 8-0.
I always remember Herm Edwards, you play to win the game.
You got to play to win, right? You got to play to win. I mean, it's, nobody likes to lose. I just always say, like, don't be a bad winner and don't be a good loser. And I've always said, you don't, and there is a difference, and you can accept losing and not be a poor sport with losing, but yet you shouldn't get too used to it and think that it's okay either. Because ultimately, if you do want to go anywhere in sports, winning is what does it. And so if you learn how to win at a young age, and you can't teach winning. I think that's the other thing too that I've always said. Like, if you can form a team, and Humboldt did this a number of years ago, when they won their 3 titles in 06, 07, 08, the nucleus of their team was made up of AA guys that had gone through the Pee Wee Bantam and midget ranks, and they all won provincial titles in the Drake and Humboldt area as minor hockey players. So when they got to junior A, you didn't really need to explain the importance of winning to them. They already got it, they tasted it, they liked it, and they kept going for 3 years.
Now, Trevor, let me ask you this question. I mean, the winning breeds a certain type of player, as does losing. And like Mike said, it's part of reality. So I want to end this question to you. What does it mean to a young kid who gets these awards and is able to continue on his career, as young as 7 or 8 or as old as 15 and 16, that he's able to show a bit of humbleness by receiving these awards, but also lead by example, knowing that he knows what it's like to win?
Again, like Mike was saying earlier, they can learn that skill. And if they have the right people behind them, Mike was saying, hey, go with your left foot or help set up your teammate, stuff like that. It's not just about developing a winner. It's about developing the right personality to go with that. A good, strong kid with a good head on his shoulder that's being coached right and raised right, then you'll see the humble winner.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's important. It's part of reality, winning and losing. And I think, like you said, if there's an incentive for an award there, I think more often than not, anybody at any age will strive for that incentive. I'm still waiting for my silver dollars for the number of assists I gave when I was 9 years old playing center. Lord knows my dad, who was coaching me at the time, said, stop scoring, start passing. And what the incentive was, every assist or 2 assists was a silver dollar. So I only think I got about 26 that year, but I know I had more than 26 assists. Nonetheless, we'll digress. We'll tell more stories come the third period as we talk more reality when it comes to being part of, the draft process we talked about 2 weeks ago. But now you're playing or you're trying to make a team and you don't make that team. How are you going to deal with that adversity? We're going to come back and talk about that in the third period here on the Coaches Parley. As mentioned, the third period's coming up here. The final frame, we're seeing teams reluctantly keeping players away from the rink, but we are seeing teams starting to form, starting to have their rookie camps, their development camps and whatnot. What do you see from a kid? Obviously, doesn't make the squad, but from a kid's standpoint, how do you deal with that adversity? Because it's part of life. Start with you, Trevor.
Saw a good post about this today, coming from a coach's perspective. Basically kind of not how to act once that happens. What can you do as that athlete if you don't make the cut to better yourself, to either go to the secondary team that you may have a chance to play against that team and that coach that cut you, or the next season to make the team? What can you do as that athlete to make yourself ready? And I think that comes out of it, instead of not getting all pissed off and everything like that and saying coach doesn't know what he's talking about. And I think previous coaching, previous experience could play a huge part of that. If you've had coaches before that have supported you and say, hey, you know what? And even the coach that cuts you, if you have that positive message coming out of it, you know what? You were close. We need to see a little bit more shooting skill, skating skill. Then at least you have something to go back on and work to better yourself. And what are you going to do during that season to do it? Are you going to go back to the secondary team that may be a lower caliber and work your butt off to get yourself better and to help that team that you are playing for be successful and show that you're a real team player? Because that might be the aspect that you're missing.
Mike, I'm going to give you a scenario here. You're a 20-year-old playing in the SJHL, your last year of eligibility. The team you're playing for is in first place, and something's up. You realize something's going on. You get traded to a team that's potentially maybe not going to make they're on the bubble. They're on the 8-9 right now. How does that motivate you to just say, you know what? I look forward to playing you in the first round. I want to be in that 8th place team.
I think it's really hard as a 20-year-old. You know, in junior hockey, 20-year-olds are usually dealt to the top teams to sort of help them get over the hump and win a championship.
Right.
There are situations, though, because of numbers, where you may make a trade and then your bottom 20-year-old who's expendable, you want to find him a place to play, so he ends up on a team that, you know, isn't making the playoffs or is going to barely make the playoffs. And I think for a 20-year-old, yeah, I'm not going to lie, I think that's really, really hard, and it takes a special kid to rebound from something like that, especially when it happens late in the season. You've only got 5 or 6 weeks left, and you got to go to a town that you maybe don't want to go to, a new billet, strange coach. You're playing out the string. The team that got you is going to give you a place to play, but they're not going anywhere. So, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie. To sit here and say, oh, hey, suck it up and do this and do that, that's easier said than done. I think probably that's where, when we talked about before, the team goals and the individual goals, and that's where, as a 20-year-old, I would say, that's when you got to focus on the individual goals. And if you've got an individual goal to continue your career beyond 20, that's got to be your focus. And so that means going and being a good teammate on a team that's going nowhere, because a lot of us that evaluate do watch for things like that. Like we do, in addition to goals and assists, we, some of us anyway, pay attention to some of those kinds of intangibles, and how are you handling that type of, adversity of maybe not being wanted by a good team and then going to a place that has no real future for the next 6 weeks of your junior career. So I think that's where the individual goals at that point would kick in, and you would try and figure out, okay, well, I'm going to make I'm not going to win a title, probably not, but what can I do here in the next 5 or 6 weeks that will, make the team that traded me feel sorry for trading me, or even, sometimes it's that extra kick that a kid needs to sort of find his next gear, if you will. So, as a 20-year-old, not easy at all. And kids where that might happen to, if they don't respond in a favorable way, it doesn't mean that they're bad kids. And it just means that, you know what, in that type of scenario, that's a tough situation. And it's a lot to ask for anybody when, you've been in a great situation maybe for multiple years, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a strange town for the next 6 weeks to play out the string.
So I'm going to give you that name 20-year-old. I mean, usually by the trade deadline, they've got a pretty good idea whether or not teams are looking at him for the next step, or looking to further his education, or he's going to call it a career at 20. How do you, now considering what we've gone through, it's March 11th, March 13th, 2020, your season abruptly ends. How do you continue to deal with that type of adversity, knowing that you could still have that potential to play in the fall, even though you've aged out? All players got to deal with that style of adversity, right? I mean, Trevor, you deal with the younger kids. I'm talking about 20-year-olds. Every single sports player had to deal with that. And we all had to deal with that type of adversity. It's amazing that, we aren't seeing as many numbers drop as we are. But at the same time, we'll talk about hockey only, why it's taken so long for us to get back. And for those kids, how do they just maintain that positive edge?
Well, again, not easy. And in hockey terms, if we're talking in COVID times, you've got, rookies that know that they've got to be really on the top of their game to try and make a team. Now we're dealing with smaller training camp rosters, and you're not even going to get that chance. And so, That's a hard question, and it's not one that I think, just thinking about it off the top of my head that I can really answer. I think, in the time that we're in now, as hard as it might be to hear this, there's a lot of careers that are destroyed because of what we've done, and some of them will never come back, and some potentials will never be fulfilled, and whose fault is that? Well,
I think you'll want to tell us whose fault it is, Mike. But no, Trevor, I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, we've had bantam drafts in all the junior hockey leagues here across each province. Is the window smaller now for these kids that are trying to crack a team for the first time because those prospect camps are smaller, because those rookie camps have less participants? How is it that you keep that, your best skate forward and you shine better than the other participants in those camps?
Yeah, everybody's going to be going hard as they can because it's unprecedented times for everybody in that aspect. Smaller groups, are you more noticeable? Are you going to be less noticeable because there's other kids that are not there or that are there that are, yeah, it's a tough situation. This year is going to look like no other year. I feel sorry for the bantam drafts with that too. Like arenas, if they're not letting so many people in, how are WHL scouts going to get in to watch games? That's the camps come into that play. But again, even then, how are they going to get into those if they're allowed to, if they're not? And the kids themselves, how much work they have to put in extra to fill those small groups.
Right. So COVID aside for both of you, I'm going to ask Mike this question first, then Trevor wants you to answer it. You get cut from a team, I'll ask you, Trevor, first, because Mike decided to go on a hiatus now again. You get cut from a team. I don't know that there has been ever a single player that has made the National Hockey League, the NBA, whatever, that has never not made a team. There's always been a step back in their progress. There's always been that one team they could not be a part of, no matter how hard they tried. And I'm going to ask you this, Trevor. Is it the life lessons that you learn from getting cut by a team that make you a stronger person later on in life? And if you agree with me, go for it.
Yeah, I think it's a life lesson for sure. Individual, again, wise, how is the kid going to take it when they are cut? They can go one of two ways. They can either go back to the rink or back to the court for basketball or soccer, onto the pitch and work that much harder to make the team. Michael Jordan, again, every night out there shooting hoops, working on everything that he could when he was cut, and look at what his career did for him. So again, personality, other kids could just call it quits because yeah.
You bring up Michael Jordan. I'm going to bring up Jamal Murray, fellow Canadian. He talks a lot about how much he shot in the dark with his dad, and look how well he's playing with the Nuggets. A great story. I only wish he could be wearing a Raptors jersey, not a Nuggets jersey. Mike, I'm going to ask you the same question. Trevor talked about the two avenues, how the two roads diverged in a wood. Which avenue and which road are you taking when it comes to you understanding or hearing that, your son or your daughter didn't make that team? And as a parent, how do you motivate that child if they want to continue in that sport?
I've tried to do it just on my own personal life experience. I've tried to do it before we ever really start to get into trying out. I've prepared my son for the fact that, okay, you know what? You're going to go and you need to be prepared for the fact that you might not make it. So make sure that when you go, you're 100%. Like when you're done your tryout, if you make it or you don't make it, you need to be able to look back and say, could I have done better? And the answer had better be, no matter what, no, I did the absolute best that I could. And there is nothing wrong with being cut from a team as long as you tried your best. And that may sound fluffy, but that's the truth. And all you can control is your best, your effort, what you do out there when you're trying out. And if what you're doing is your best, you might make it. And if you don't make it, there's nothing wrong with it, especially as we get older, in life. I had a billet one time who played AAA midget. He was a goalie. And he didn't make it when he tried out for Junior A. And he was pretty crushed that he didn't make it when he tried out for Junior A. And we ended up going to a Saskatchewan Rough Rider game, if you can remember them. They used to play in a football league that existed in Canada. But anyways, when we were at the game, I said to him, you got to remember, there were 12 teams in the AAA Midget League. That meant there were 24 goalies in Saskatchewan that were capable of playing at that level for that age group. And you were one of those 24. There's a lot of goalies. So to get to AAA Midget and to be one of those 24 goalies, you have to be really, really good. But then after AAA Midget, when we get into Junior A, there's also 12 teams in the SJHL, but not all of those goalies are from Saskatchewan. Not all of those goalies are rookies. So over the course of a 12-team league, there may only be 8 or 10 goalie jobs open on any given year. So if you tried out and you tried your best and you didn't make it, it's okay, because that doesn't mean you're not good. It just means that it gets harder and harder and harder as you get on in life to make some of these teams. And there is no shame, even when you're trying out, just to try out for some of these teams, to be given the opportunity to do that. If you try your best, you don't make it, there's no shame. That doesn't take away the disappointment, but really you can only control what your own effort is at these tryouts.
I remember not making a lot of teams growing up. I remember making teams that I did growing up. And the motivation of playing teams that cut me in that beginning of the year and playing against them proved dividends to not only the stories I told in the locker room beforehand, but also the extra effort I would give on the ice. I remember playing teams out in the Atlantic side of Worlds in high school. I remember playing AA and AAA teams that cut me, and then playing on an A1 team, stacked, and beating that AA team at a ripe old age of 12. We'll go back in the Wayback Machine. And yeah, it feels good.
I can remember actually making a baseball team as a kid, and after I made it, I wished I hadn't, because I didn't have as much fun actually. Like, I ended up, I was a pitcher, and I made the team, but the reality was I wasn't going anywhere. I'm not going to be a major league pitcher, but as it turned out, I didn't get the pitches off. And then when I wasn't pitching, I wasn't playing, as opposed to the lower team that I was on. I also played first base. So if I wasn't pitching, I was in the lineup, and I was usually hitting third or fourth. Whereas on the better team that I was playing on, I wasn't hitting at all, and so, and I felt that I was probably pretty grounded enough to realize that, I don't have a future in the game. And so what is best for me to enjoy the sport? And after I made that team, and you have some self-reflecting moments where you're honest with yourself, and it actually would have been better for me just for the enjoyment of the sport had I not made it and played down a level.
We've talked bubbles, we've talked fluff, we've talked adversity. Time now to get to our last second, the final shift. The floor is yours, Mr. Trevor Stalker. You have 60 seconds or so, give or take. Give us a final thought on tonight's episode.
Kind of going back to the first episode, is we just need to see things opening up more. School's been in for 3 weeks. Haven't seen a whole bunch of cases pretty much anywheres that I'm aware of. I know Alberta's had a few here and there, and kids getting sent home to school and stuff like that. We just need things to open up, get hockey going more. Hockey Alberta has been great, as I mentioned, about opening up, working with the minor league teams and stuff like that to get things going, getting timelines set hopefully soon. At least they're talking about it and getting things rolling.
Mike?
Well, I think I'll just say, something that I had said off camera before we started, and I apologize for my bad internet tonight. Usually it's really, really good. But back in March when we talked about, two people are sick and we've only got one ventilator, we don't want to be in a situation where we're choosing one person's health over the other. Well, we're there, here in late September, and it might not be 2 COVID patients and we're choosing ventilators, but what we have is a health issue with COVID versus every other health issue imaginable, whether it's substance abuse, mental illness, child abuse, economic stability, you name it. You put them all into one basket, and they're on one side, and you have COVID on the other side. And what's happened is we are at that stage, and it's not a ventilator; it's health issues, COVID or these. And sadly, we've made the decision that we're going to choose the COVID side every single time, and we'll never be able to know. But I tell you, with lives that have been destroyed from people that will never come within 1,000 football fields of the virus, too many for me to count, and it's sad.
I can't agree with you more, gentlemen. We need to see, a little bit more of a proactive approach when it comes to returning to the healthier side of life, and that incorporates and that includes seeing children have the opportunity to get back to the sports they love, the parents supporting the kids on the sports they love, and just, for lack of a better term, just seeing, those activities return. I think for all of us as parents that we see young children missing what they love to do best. And we're not talking about going to school. We're talking about the stuff after school. Yeah. So we look forward to chatting with you, gentlemen, on our next episode. Hope you enjoyed the fact that we split it up in periods and we talked a little bit about each different topic. We'll try and do that again next time on the Coaches Parley. Again, thanks for joining me, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening, and we look forward to discussing some more topics, and maybe perhaps the Lightning or the Stars. Who are we taking?
I bet on the Lightning months and months ago. Forgot that I did. I win big money if they win.
Is that a Vegas bet or is that a friendly bet?
No, it was an online sports gambling site that
we won't give them any kudos. Trevor?
I'm going to go with the Western team. Needs to come back out west, even though they're
Well, I'm not taking either one. I would like to see. It doesn't matter. I mean, Stamkos, just to rub it in the face of Maple Leafs fans because they chose what's his face from the Islanders instead of Stammer, and I like to see Steve Stamkos raise another one. It'd be nice, and John Cooper deserves one too. Anyway, thank you for watching the Coaches Parlay, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.